The Power of Purity Conference. When you're ready to manage your sexual gift in a healthier way. When you're ready to bring your sexual gift under the authority of God. When you're ready to control sex instead of being controlled by sex. The Power of Purity Conference.
Welcome to the Power of Purity podcast, the show that empowers men to experience their sexual gift in a healthier way. Now here's your host, Tony Ingracia.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Power of Purity podcast. I'm really glad you could be with me today. And today we're going to continue the second half of a discussion with Keelie Reason with the website lovehopeadventure.com. And Keelie has a lot of really awesome tips and strategies and ideas and suggestions that will help us be healthier in the context of our marriages when it comes to the topic of sex. So with that, let's jump right back into the second half of this interview with Keelie Reason. God bless you. But let me ask you this, Keelie. So how do you try to help people through Love, Hope, Adventure with all these issues? You focus on the topic of marriage, and then more specifically on the topic of sex in marriage. So what kind of things do you talk about in the attempt to try to help people experience their sexual gifts in a healthier way in the context of their marriage?
Well, obviously, a big heartbeat behind what we do is talking about communication. And we just tell people you have to have conversations about sex. It's so important. If you can't talk to your spouse about sex, you can't talk to your kids about sex. So it's a good place to start. And we really focus on getting people to talk about those things that bother them and that they need to know, just really figuring out how to communicate well with each other, because it's more than just using your words. Austin and I have recently been talking about how your different personalities will keep you from being able to communicate. Mm-hmm. And just men and women, they don't communicate the same way anyways.
Right.
But keeping those lines of communication open, just
so important, yes.
Yeah, well, what I find often happens is one spouse is really struggling with something in the marriage, but they haven't ever actually had that conversation with the other spouse. They just speculate. And I know a lot of people are speculating because I can see what search terms bring people to my website. And a lot of times there are questions in there. And I see questions come through marriage blog forums and things like that. And I'm like, that is a question you need to ask your spouse. And I think that they are not actually having the conversations, because it is really hard to go to your spouse and say, I need more sex, or,
Right, especially when it's a very highly sensitive, delicate issue that's already kind of confusing. There's these feelings swirling around it, this cycle we're stuck in. And so there's issues that are safe for people to bring up. I can bring this up and I have a sense that this is a safe thing to talk to you about. Then there's other issues that we both intuitively know are very unsafe, that we pretty much disagree. It's pretty confusing and overwhelming. And historically, every time we've tried to talk about it, it's even more upsetting. So people, I think, get to the place where your observation is so accurate. They just don't know how to talk. And then they're scared to talk. And so it puts you in this very stuck place, this difficult place. So your point about communication is just so excellent. It's so necessary. I will tell you, as a pastor and as a professional counselor, I'm amazed at how ineffective so many people are at communicating. And I get it. I totally get it because of my own life and how ineffective I was at communicating in the context of my marriage for so long. But they don't have classes where they take little boys and girls or junior high kids and teach you how to communicate. It's just something that people assume. And I'm talking about big people here, Keely,
Yeah,
adults.
I know.
The couples that come into my counseling office, almost without exception, they do not know how to talk. They cannot talk to each other. And more often than not, a very big part of what we do in the therapeutic process is we try to help people learn to talk again. What does it mean
Exactly.
to communicate, to share, to listen? And it's such an important skill.
Well, one of the parts about communication that Austin and I try to help people with is that you guys have to define what words mean to you, because sex doesn't mean the same thing to a wife as it does a man, and she
Wow.
has to fully understand that sex equals love to her husband, and she needs to accept that whether she understands it or not, and he needs to understand what sex means to her.
That's so good.
Anything. And it's not just sex, it's any part of, Christmas means something completely different to me than my husband based off of how we grew up.
Right.
Relaxation, that's going to be something totally different to him than me. But we've got to have like about 50 conversations before we can really address a problem, because we have to know where is the other person coming from before we can even begin to understand one another. We have to know what they are actually saying when they use certain words.
Well, that's so good. So you mentioned communication, that's one of the key points that you talk about, that you identify in the blog Love Hope Adventure. Are there some other key themes that you talk about or mention or touch on? Well, let me just say it this way. I was looking in preparation for our interview. I was just kind of looking over the blog, and I'm noticing all these topics of different things that you've written about. And I wrote a list here, and let me just read a few of them. How to boost sexual desire, how to initiate sex, rekindling the flame. What do you do when there's different levels of desire? What about the frequency of sex? How do you figure that out? Uh, what about creativity, becoming creative in your sexual expression? How do you flirt with one another? How do you get in the mood when you're not in the mood? How do you take turns
Mhm.
giving and receiving pleasure? How can you be more romantic? Uh, how to use lighting to set the mood, why couples should sleep naked, how to become a better lover, getting outside your comfort zone, how to have a sexy Valentine's Day. I mean, it goes on and on and on. These are all themes, all
Mhm.
articles that you've written. So it looks like just a wide variety of topics that you're trying to speak to really help people with this area.
Yeah, I what I want to do is really be very open about sex as much as I possibly can without defiling my own marriage bed, because not everybody can speak openly about sex, but I can. Like, it just doesn't bother me because I grew up in a home where we spoke about sex,
Well, not
and
only
I have
that, but
had.
I have no doubt that you have a gifting and a calling on your life to minister to people and to help people in this area. So God's given you the grace to be able to tackle these tough issues.
And that could very well be the case. I mean, I see a lot of people asking these questions, and they need to have the answers, but I think that it you have to speak to it delicately so that, like I said, you don't defile your own marriage. But I think some bloggers go too far, sharing way too much going on in their bedrooms. So Austin and I really try to keep. I mean, yes, we're going to have to bring our personal experience into some things, but we try to keep sex direction like, "Hey, you could try this or that," not, "Hey, this is what we did yesterday."
Right. Uh huh.
But I think there is a major need for this. For people to have a safe place to ask these questions, because I could ask my mom if I had a question. Not everyone has that. Not everybody has the ability to say, hey, it hurts when I do fill in the blank, or I really want to give oral sex, but I don't know what that means or how to make that happen, or So much more practical sex based. So once they start getting to the place where they can recognize, hey, this can be amazing for us, this can be equivalent. Like, so women have to look at sex as something that they are doing with their spouse, such as if they were going to go on a walk with them or go out to supper with them. This is just one more thing you guys are doing together. And planning really helps if you are a lower drive spouse or you don't have as much desire. So these people need that information, but they need
Right.
it in a safe environment, because there are not very many Christian girls that are going to go out there and go, how to give better oral sex, because there is no way in the world that you would have any clue what's going to come up.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't even go run that search right now.
So that's why what you're doing, Keelie, is just so awesome, because it's presenting a resource and information that will be so helpful to people when sometimes it's hard to find some good information on these topics, especially that's being presented through kind of a framework of faith and an understanding of spirituality and who God is and what God's design and plan and intention for marriage and sex is. So I think it's really neat that you're offering your ministry.
Well, thank you.
Let me ask. I have this suspicion that for so many couples, sex can become what I might just call routine, uh, especially the longer that you've been married, right? You
Oh,
mentioned
yeah.
that you and Austin have been married for 13 years. I mean, the first month is one thing, the first 6 months, the first year or two, maybe, but my wife and I have been married for 33 years. So I think that people get into a routine and what becomes normal to them, and maybe it even becomes complacent, and then maybe it even becomes boring. So it just occurs to me that it's important for people to maybe have a kind of curiosity and to be willing to stretch themselves and try new things and to experiment and to be playful and to have fun and to try to shake up the old cycle, the old routine, keep it fresh, keep it exciting. So, do you agree with that? What would you have to say about that?
Well, I absolutely agree with that. So when Austin and I first got married, we ended up buying some kind of thing called maybe romantic nights or something. I forget what it is. And we gave it to our parents and stuff at the wedding. But we bought it one for ourselves, and it was supposed to help you create like a romantic, intimate date nights with your spouse. Austin and I really didn't need it. I mean, it had some cute ideas, and we tried to do it, but I felt like because we were so newlywed, it didn't have as an effect on us as if we had gotten bored of the routine. So we put that Simply Romantic Nights thing away for a long time, because we did them all. But probably about 3 years ago, I had been reading the Dating Divas, and they have a lot of great date nights on them, and some of them are really sexy. So I wanted to create a board game for a couple that I knew. They were going to be going on their anniversary, and I based it off of something I read on that website. And I wasn't even a blogger. I didn't even have Love Hip Adventure. So I get Austin involved, and I said, let's create this bedroom game.
Wow, what an
Uh,
awesome friend! You're going to create a board game about sex for your friends.
yeah.
I mean, what an awesome friend!
I am the one who always gives every couple sex baskets. It's so true. I mean, I always do this for weddings, and I do varying levels of things I'm going to give people depending on who they are and how well I know them. But these were people I really knew. So I'm like, let's make this bedroom game. And we did. We brainstormed it together, and we were like, well, we've made this game.
So
We should try it
of
out.
course you and Austin had to check out the game to see if it was any good, right?
Yeah, check it out, see if it's any good. And I thought our sex life was really good. I mean, it was. I didn't feel bored. I didn't feel like, we were routine, routine, routine. Um, But this game really made a difference for us. And it was so exciting. It's on the website now. I mean, I have several bedroom games, and these are my highest visited post on the website is Sexy Truth or Dare and every other bedroom game that I've created. Sexy Truth or Dare is actually not the one I created for these people or the one we played, but because we had been married for probably like 10 years and we played this game and it made such an impact on us, I thought that people need this.
Sure, it could
And
help.
and I
It could
felt like
help
we
a
had
lot
a
of other people.
yeah, we even had like I said, I didn't think we had a boring or routine sex life either, but it really made a difference for us. So,
That's awesome. And you were willing to experiment and to try some things and to be playful and creative. So you created this game, Sexy Truth or Dare, and it's available at your website, Love Hope Adventure. Is that correct?
yes. So if you sign up for my newsletter, I email out the free Sexy Truth or Dare game, and the game that we created for the couple is called "It's Getting Hot in Here," and that can actually be purchased on Etsy. But any game like that, the reason why I like these games, and I call them foreplay games, is that it takes the guesswork out of foreplay. It's like, okay, so I want to be exciting in the bedroom and I want to do something new, but I just don't know how to be sexy. I don't even know what that means. What am I supposed to do next? Okay, now I'm going to kiss them, and now what?
Right.
But when I have a deck of cards next to me that says, kiss this person there, hug them, or whatever, I'm
Do
not going
this.
to go
Do
through.
ABC,
Yeah,
XYZ, 1, 2, 3.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you mix it up every time. So the experiences are always different, but it lends its way to you having like some kind of foundation to be adventurous in the bedroom. And you're not guessing like, what does sexy mean? What does foreplay look like?
Wow, that's really good. So have a lot of people accessed the game, and I guess a lot of people have used it, and it's been a blessing to a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
folks.
Oh yeah, that the Sexy Truth or Dare post is my highest viewed post. It has been. I mean, like over 40,000 hits have happened on that post this year. Probably more than that at this point. But several hundred of
Wow.
people come to that post every day. And that shows me that there is a real need for that because they want to be adventurous in the bedroom. They want to explore. They don't know what to do.
Right. So it's like the old metaphor of the carpenter. The carpenter goes to work, and he carries his toolbox, and he opens it up, and there's a hammer and a screwdriver and maybe an adjustable wrench. The point is, you can only use the tools that are in your toolbox. So now a
Sure.
job needs to be done, but he doesn't have the tool. So he can't use a tool that he doesn't have. So it feels like what's kind of neat about these ideas and the concept of your game is it kind of puts more tools in people's reach in their toolbox. So
Absolutely.
so now they have more to choose from, more ideas, more variety, and that's
And part
helpful.
of this is me like getting so sick and tired of every spice it up post that is secular that I read is like, hey, you want to spice things up in your bedroom? Well, why don't you watch porn? Or why don't you get a third party? I'm like, people, there is so many more amazing things you can do than that stuff. That is not healthy. But I
Right.
am so tired of reading these bloggers out there that will say porn is healthy for your marriage. I'm like, are y'all on crack? It is not healthy for your marriage.
Right, that's right. But that's the importance, like I mentioned earlier, of just having a framework of faith and realizing that God created sex. It was His idea. It's a wonderful, beautiful, awesome gift, and He intends it to bless our lives. And there's a way for us to experience our sexuality in the context of marriage in a way that's honoring to your spouse and honoring to God, and God wants to bless that. and
Mhm.
and certainly the culture of the world has its gospel of sex, and would say,
Sure.
hey, what about this? What about that? What about this? And things that are way outside of God's design and intention for sex and marriage.
Yeah, and a lot of the time when I read things that talk about spicing up your sex life and stuff, many of them are very, very self focused. Why don't you masturbate? Why don't you, and I'm like, so basically, what most of these things are is taking the attention off of your spouse and putting it on yourself and how you can please yourself. And our goal is to get a couple being sacrificial and selfless in their meeting the needs of their spouse.
Absolutely,
So
yes.
if you want to spice things up in your marriage and in your bedroom, then put your attention on your spouse.
That's right. Absolutely. I love that. If you were to listen to my podcast, a few episodes, or people that follow me, they know this, that very, very much a theme in my presentation. I believe very much that God's intention for sexuality is that my sexual gift belongs exclusively to my wife and vice versa. That means that I can never ever express my sexual self apart from my wife. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
my sexual desire, my interest, my penis, my hands, my mouth,
Mm-hmm.
everything belongs to her. And the only place that I can take it out, that I can use it, that I can enjoy it, that I can play with it is with her, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And without a doubt, God intends for us to honor our spouse through what I might call this kind of sexual exclusivity.
Absolutely. And it does need to be exclusive. I think that, for a husband that has a wife that's really struggling with sex and struggling with that aspect of their life, some things that he can really do to help her would be to create a sexual experience that isn't just sex. Because there's so much that goes into it to create intimacy with your wife. And if you would, like, say, commit, like if you were going to be on a date with her, commit a few hours in the bedroom doing more than just getting to orgasm, that would make a huge difference because it helped her see that you're not there just for the sex. You're there to have company with her, to keep company with her. And women crave that. They want their spouse to want to spend time with them and to hang out with them. And in order for them to really enjoy that sexual experience as much, they have to know that their husband is there for them, not just their sexual release.
Right, yeah. A way that I like to say that, just to complement what you're saying, if you can picture that there's three entities in the bedroom at that moment. There's the husband, the wife, and their sex. We're going to have sex. There's three entities. And I think what happens sometimes, you know the old adage, a means and a means to an end. So I think a lot of times women feel like what my husband really wants is sex. That's the
Mhm.
end. And so I'm reduced to being the means. In other words, he's going to
Yeah,
use me. He's willing to use my body to get what he really wants, which is sex and an orgasm.
sure.
I happen to be a female body that he can use, and so that's kind of
Hmm.
something that she would resent, of course. And I think God intends for us to kind of flip that thing around where the three entities are still in the bedroom, but now the goal is no longer sex. The goal is my wife, you see. And
Hmm.
sex happens to be a wonderful, beautiful, awesome way, a very intimate way that we can be close to each other and present to each other and touch each other, enjoy each other, and delight in one another. But it isn't so much about the sex, it's more about the person. An author that I really like, David Snarch, I love the way that he said it. The beauty is not in sex, the beauty is in people.
Yeah, it's true. Well, a lot of women that I talk to and have talked to over the years really feel that their husbands only want them for sex.
How sad.
And I think that it is like a disconnect that is happening between the husband and wife before they get to the bedroom. A man has got to be emotionally connected to his wife before he has sex with her for her to not feel like she's just some sex toy to him.
Boy, that is so good. It's so important. And I just encourage any guys listening to this just to really latch onto that and think about that and meditate on it and pray about it and consider what it means for you to really cultivate that kind of relational and emotional environment in your relationship with your wife that will be conducive then to healthy sexuality, you know. And I think a lot of times guys, we tend to be like Bam Bam and we're just not that good at that, but it's something that's non-negotiable, it's non-optional. We have to learn how to be better at that if we're going to expect our wives to participate in sex and be present and to even desire it and be present and enjoy it, you know.
See, I know very few women that wouldn't wholeheartedly give themselves in sex if their husbands made real initiative to speak to them in their love language. And speaking to your wife in her love language is essential because if her love language is acts of service and you're bringing her gifts or words of affirmation, she doesn't hear that you love her because the dishes are still in the sink or whatever. So if she feels loved, she is going to be so much more excited about reciprocating that love through physical affection.
Right. That's so good. And since you're referencing that concept, which is so beautiful, it's taken from the book, The Five Love Languages, right?
Yeah.
So I'll just mention that if anybody's unfamiliar with this concept of love languages, to check out that book, The Five Love Languages by Chapman, I believe. Is that correct?
Yep. It was Gary Chapman. And I'll tell you, for many years, I did not give any credence whatsoever to the love languages. But it really affected my marriage, not understanding the way my husband receives and gives love, and same way with him. So what would happen is because I didn't understand, because I'm an acts of service person, and he is like a words of affirmation and physical touch person. So I could do stuff for him all day long, but then I would feel as though he was telling me it wasn't enough because I wasn't giving him enough physical attention or words of affirmation.
Right.
And vice versa, because he speaks to me in those languages, I'm a huge touch me not. So when he gets all huggy and lovey and snuggly on me, and I'm like, oh, get off, I am communicating to him, I do not love you.
See, but
So,
it's so incredibly important that you understand that about him, and that he
exactly.
understands that about you, or else it's just it's a disaster waiting to happen.
That's what we talk about with the communication being so important because, you know, you can communicate that you don't love someone when you don't mean to do that.
Right.
It can be so simple too.
Keely, we have a few minutes left, and I have a question that's occurring to me just for the fun of it. I'm going to throw it out there. Uh, porn is a huge issue in this day and age. You mentioned
Hmm.
porn a few minutes ago, and the statistics are staggering. And I'm not even talking about the culture or the world system, I'm talking about within the church.
Hmm.
Most recent statistics tell us that 68% of Christian men view pornography on a regular basis. And a regular basis means anywhere from several times a week to at least one time a month.
Yeah.
55% of married Christian men view porn on a regular basis, and 50% of pastors view porn on a regular basis. And in my
Hmm.
counseling practice, so many of the couples that I end up seeing, uh, you know, Christian men, this is an issue of duplicity, of course. If you're looking at porn, you don't want your wife to know it normally, so he's kind of doing it and hiding it and trying not to get caught.
Mm.
And before you know it, he's been doing it for months or years, more often than not. Then finally he gets caught. So the wife is very hurt, very upset. It's very disruptive, and
Mm.
they end up in counseling. So, you know, I don't even know what my question is. I want to ask you something like, do you, does it make sense to you that a woman would be deeply hurt if she finds out her husband's looking at pornography?
Oh, absolutely. Because the minute a woman, or a man for that matter, because lots and lots of women are looking at porn now too, and they're really addicted to it. If so, what a woman or a man is going to think is that they are not good enough.
Right.
That the reason the spouse is looking at the porn is because they are not meeting their sexual needs, their body is not attractive enough, and that they aren't good enough for the spouse. Now, I don't think that that is really what is occurring because, see, now that we understand porn more and we see it, we understand that it's more like being addicted to drugs. It is this addiction that they cannot break. It is really damaging to the people around them, just like if they were addicted to drugs. But they hate themselves for looking at it, but they can't stop. And they don't know why they can't stop because they don't understand that addiction either.
But your point is well taken, which is that the spouse, the offended spouse, does not need to internalize that and take responsibility and feel
Yeah.
like it's my fault that my spouse is looking at porn.
They should not internalize it, but they absolutely 100% do. Even if they know that pornography is addicting. I mean, it is a huge slap in your face.
Pretty hard to not
To
take personally, yeah.
It is because you are talking about exposing yourself the most intimately to a person. You aren't exposing yourself like this to anybody else in the world. And what they are saying to you through their actions is, I don't love you enough to look past whatever flaws you've got. I'm going to go to this thing over here instead. That may not be what they're trying to say, but that is what they're communicating.
Right. So it's a theme that we speak to on this podcast quite a bit, the Power of Purity podcast, and I just want to encourage the brothers and the guys listening to this to stay in the battle and to really resist pornography because of the overwhelming hurt and damage that it can cause in the context of a marriage. And guys, we just need to do better, and we need to work on it, and we need to learn what it means to bring our sexual gift into that place of exclusivity with our wife, which means that porn absolutely has to go out the window.
Well, I'll tell you that what I am learning so much more about porn, and I've seen this. I've seen porn destroy a guy and a girl's. I've seen porn destroy the individual. And so it's not just a matter of quit looking at porn, save your marriage. It's like quit looking at porn and save yourself.
Wow, that's good. Really good, Keelie.
Because, porn is, like depression is getting linked to porn now, and anxiety and poor self-esteem. And it's not just about saving your marriage. It's about being free yourself. You need better than what porn can give you, not just your wife or your marriage.
That's right. Yes, I recently did a series on my podcast here, the high price of pornography, and I reviewed 10 prices that men are paying for their indulgence in pornography that they don't realize they're paying, or they minimize it, they justify it, they rationalize it, they can't decode it, they try to tell themselves it's no big deal, especially if nobody knows. But I believe that there's a very, very high price, and you are paying that price. And if you haven't heard that series of episodes, I might encourage you to go back. The high price of pornography. Keelie, before we wrap up here in a minute, how about this question? If I was to ask you just for the most basic advice that you might have for a married couple around this issue of sexuality, and what does it mean for us to grow, to progress, to be healthier as individuals, to be healthier together in the way we're functioning sexually, the way we're relating to each other sexually, the way we're experiencing sexuality in our marriage. Just what basic advice would you have for a couple? How can we all be working on this? How do we move forward?
Well, I would say that first of all, both husband and wife should be looking at sex as like a basic need for the marriage. A wife should not look at sex as being just for the husband. She needs to look at it as for herself, for her husband, that God created it to unify them, to connect them emotionally and spiritually and physically. And if she is not experiencing sex fully, and he is not experiencing sex fully, if they're reserved in that, then they're not really connecting the way that God designed them to. And that when you are in relationship, like a sexual relationship with your spouse, you are honoring God. You are worshiping him through your sex life. But
Yes,
if you're allowing shame and you're allowing brokenness and you're allowing reservations and things to rule, you're not experiencing the freedom that God gave you
that's right.
as a Christian, as a married couple, as a person. And you're really just damaging yourself. And the things going on in your bedroom, they're going to affect the rest of your relationship and you as a person. It will affect all of your relationships, including with other people and your kids. I mean, if things aren't going well in that area for you, it'll damage it. So a mindset change is absolutely necessary for specifically women. I don't know about men, but women are all mind. We have to have the right mindset. And so you've got to change your mindset that this is a true need for you and for the health of your marriage. And what can you do to throw yourself into it?
Awesome, Keely. That's really good. Something I love, I use this metaphor of a gap, this concept of a gap, and it implies a sense of disconnect or distance between where I am and where I need to be. Sometimes there's this gap. I'm over here, but I need to be over there, and there's a gap between where I am and where I'm going. And something that I just love about God is He's a God of mercy and a God of grace and a God of healing and redemption and forgiveness. And these are all values that we need, and God has the power and the ability, and God wants to bring healing and redemption to our lives and situations. And through God, I believe that He has the resources that empowers us to close that gap as we move from where we are to where He's taking us. And I'm just so thankful. I just want to say and encourage anybody that's listening today, don't give up. Hang in there. Keep moving forward. Move toward God. Seek out these resources that can be helpful. And I just promise that God has wonderful things intended for you. And Sherry and I are living proof that God can heal deeply broken people and God can heal deeply broken marriages. So there is hope. And I just bless you in Jesus' name. Thanks for listening today. Keely, thank you so much for being here. We really, really appreciate you and everything that you're doing. And I really appreciate you being on the Power of Purity podcast today.
Thanks so much for having me. I've really enjoyed talking with you.
Guys, the website is lovehopeadventure.com, and you can tell after listening to Keely, she has a lot to say. I think she has a beautiful heart and a gifting to just encourage us and to share information and guidance and wisdom around these issues. If you go to the website, I promise you, you won't regret it. She's got dozens of articles and resources there and her games and all sorts of things. So I think it'll really, really help you. So I encourage you to go to Love Hope Adventure and check it out. Keely, thanks again. Is there anything, any last word you want to share before we close?
Just thanks for having me on. It's been really great to be able to share with your audience.
God bless you, Keelie. Guys, thank you so much for being with me today. God bless you, and I'll look forward to seeing you in our next episode. God bless you.
Thanks for listening. Visit powerofpurity.org for more resources and information. And if this podcast has been helpful or encouraging, please invite a friend to listen. Until next time, remember, there's power in purity.
Purity is possible with the power of purity. www.powerofpurity.org